All right. We've been doing this for a couple of months, and every time I'm like shocked that we can make this technology work. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the final installment of the 2021 Legislative Community Conversation. Thank you guys so much for, many of you have been regular participants, and we really have appreciated the engagement. We've had some really great engagement over the past couple of months. And I'll say a little bit more about this, but I am going to be sending out a survey to folks. I think one of the things that I know has been on my mind is, you know, we're entering into sort of like a new strange transitional phase, both coming out of the legislature, but then of course also with the pandemic. And I feel like people have like lots of differing ideas about what is most helpful to them in terms of staying connected and engaged. Some people really appreciated Zoom and being able to connect from their home. And some people really want nothing to do with it ever again and really just want to like catch us at Tuesday Night Live. And so I just put together like a super brief Google Form survey that I'll email out to folks on this email list, and I'll put on Front Porch Forum, just asking how people would prefer to stay connected. And you know, if there's enough people, I will not speak for Dan because I think it's probably the last thing he'd ever want to do. But if there's enough people that want to continue some form of like Zoom meetings throughout the off season, then I would be happy to put together something, at least, you know, one or two to give people that opportunity. So anyway, just keep your eyes open for that. So I will just briefly introduce myself, and then I'll let Dan and Rich introduce themselves, and then we can kind of go from there. So I'm Kate Donnally. I am the representative for Lamoille 2 District alongside Dan Noyes, serving Belvedere, Johnson, Hyde Park, and Wolcott. Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
A rookie mistake. Good morning, I'm Dan and was muted. Good to see you all this morning. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, Senator, go ahead.
Got it, Dan? I'm Rich Westman, and I represent the county. Technically not Wolcott, but they still call me from Wolcott, just like I'm theirs.
Aww. It's a sign of affection, I think, right? That's how I would take that.
I take it as a sign of affection.
Nice. Great.
Well, let me just respond to him, Rich. I mean, I think it's a sign of respect also, and you know, respecting your work and what you're doing. Hey,
well,
go ahead.
I love it, you know, but.
Kate, I just want to make it just a quick response. I mean, and we're going to get the form, but I think the nice thing is we've learned a lot, and we can mix and match. You know, so I don't know what people want to do for the summer, but you know, if you start again, sure, there can be some on Zoom, so some people can attend that maybe couldn't otherwise, but then you can have some live gathering, which is nice. I think you can. That's a nice thing about it. Now that we have this technology, we can mix and match.
Yeah, I agree. I think some sort of hybrid is probably going to be helpful. I mean, you know, obviously it's a smaller group today, but we've had like 20 to 30 people at these meetings, and I'm just not sure that, you know, we would get that many at a coffee hour on a Saturday morning. And it's nice to have the option. So we'll sort of see what works for folks. We haven't much. Yeah, you go ahead.
I would put a plug in next winter. I think it's hard, particularly in January, February, for people to get out in the morning. I think the Zoom things work really well for the winter. It's a lot easier to get up early in the morning and in the summer and get out. It's harder when it's dark.
Very true. Very true. So we have a smaller group today. We haven't done this because we haven't really had the space. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. People have different feelings about these things, but do people want to introduce themselves? Does that feel like a thumbs down, thumbs up? Is that a thing people would be interested in? Thumbs up? Okay. So what I'm going to do, just because Zoom can be complicated, is I'm just going to go down the list that I see in front of me, and I'll just say your name. And if you want to just unmute yourself and just say, your name and what town maybe you're from, and if you want to add anything else quickly about yourself, go for it. That might just be a nice way to connect. So Judy, you are the first on my list.
So Judy Clark, and I live in Hyde Park. I'm actually outside of Hyde Park, what used to be the town of Garfield. So if some people know where Garfield is, and I don't want to say a lot about myself. I want to take this chance to thank the three of you for representing us, and I think you've done, excuse my language, but a hell of a job in a hell of a year. And I just want to say I really appreciate, what our legislature's done, our administration's done. I can't imagine it. So anyway, I've had lifelong interest in community development. So whenever there's anything about, our communities, I'm interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. I really appreciate that. Bill or William, I think we talked about this last time. Is Bill, you're comfortable with Bill? Is that?
Yeah, I'm in Hyde Park. I'm Bill. I've been called worse, but I can go by Bill. Yeah, just thanks for the invite. And I just have a general interest in what's going on. So here I am.
Cool. Thanks for being here. Mm-hmm. Bradley.
Hi, I'm Bradley Fletcher. Up in Eden. We just moved up here in the spring after bouncing around the Moyle County a little bit. We moved to Vermont in 2019, and so most of Vermont for us has been COVID, but still awesome. And I do love the Zoom stuff. I have never been able to have this sort of involvement and access to local government anywhere I've lived. And I don't know if back home in Kentucky they've been able to do this or not, so I don't have any comparison, but I think some sort of hybrid option would be really great.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for being here. Karen.
Hi, I live in Hyde Park, and I mainly got on today to echo what Judy just said, not her personal interest, but just really thanking you guys for the work this year. My own specific interests lie in the field of education, so but thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Kurt, you are next on my list. Oh, yeah.
Great. So my name is Kirk Klein. I live in Wolcott. I've been a member of the select board in Wolcott for the past year and a half. More recently, I've gotten involved in the Hyde Park, Johnson, Wolcott law enforcement study group. And I personally like Zoom. There's lots of things I don't like about it, but the easy access, I think, is great. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for being here and for your work in the community. And that goes to all of you. You guys have all been really actively engaged in the community in a lot of ways. Linda, I see you're on your phone and you're muted, hi.
Okay.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning. Linda Martin, former legislator, but now I'm chair of the Wolcott Select Board with Kurt. I just want to thank you. It's been a good session, I think. I really like that Vermont's politics, that you work together with the different parties to accomplish something. That really stood out for me this year. So I appreciate that and the work you're doing. I love Zoom. I'm still in my pajamas. I probably wouldn't come to a 9 o'clock meeting, coffee hour. So if you continue to have some Zoom meetings, I would be there.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks for
Yes.
being here in your pajamas and all. We
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah, I'm hearing some solid support for a hybrid model. I might occasionally tease Dan about this because I think if Dan could leave a Zoom meeting now and never return, he might be a happy human. But we'll figure out a compromise that supports everyone's overall mental health and well-being. So yeah, again, we have a smaller group, but generally, as y'all know, because I think you have all been here in some form before, we just sort of open it up for questions. So I don't know if anyone here has any questions for us or anything that they came, hoping or wanting to connect about, but feel free to raise your little virtual hand, or that's how we've done it in the past. It's sort of easy that way, but you're also welcome to just jump in with a smaller group.
I'll make one more comment before we get on real quick, and maybe is it Brad or Bradley? What do you want to be called?
Bradley, please.
Bradley. I don't know. It always impresses me that we have this access to our representatives. And I just tend to think in a lot of places, you probably would not have the Republicans and Democrats, together and working together and talking together and discussing together. I just have so appreciated it and feel like I'm privileged or something. So anyway, again, thank you.
Coming from Kentucky, I feel like I landed on the moon politically because of what you're talking about, Judy. This is like a whole nother world. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a good moment, I think, to thank, Senator Westman's been awesome. And Dan and I were talking about doing these meetings, and Senator Westman was just on it from the beginning and was like, yeah, can I come and can I join you? And it's just been so awesome to have you here, Senator Westman, and also just in terms of representation from the Senate, and I think between the three of us and the various committees that we serve on, it also just really helps to be able to provide information and answer the questions that people have. I know if people have a lot of appropriations questions and it was just me in here, you'd have a lot of let me get back to you on that. And I think having the three of us be able to work together just locally, I have been super grateful for. I think it allows us to provide much, much better information to the public. So thanks to you guys for that. Yeah, any other thoughts or questions? Or Dan or Rich, if you want to jump in too,
this is Kirk Klein. I actually do have, I guess, a legislative process question. As I mentioned earlier, we have gotten involved in a 3-town law enforcement study group that between Wolcott, Johnson, and Hyde Park. And one of the things that a conclusion that we've come to, and I think there's a lot of agreement, is that as we look at the level of service from the sheriff, the quality, by the way, I want to say the quality of service is excellent. The concern comes down to the level of service. And as we investigate that problem, it all kind of hones down to the same thing, which is the lack of competitiveness on the recruitment and retention side for the sheriff. Most specifically, it's the retirement plan. And I've been doing some research and following up on it, and watching some documents go by. And it appears to me that this has been an issue for quite a number of years and has been brought up in the legislature for quite a number of times, and seems to die on the vine somewhere. So the latest report was from the treasurer's office, actually. Their final report was this year, and it seemed to be inconclusive. Basically, the committee felt that it was out of their purview, and their recommendation is for more study and more follow-up, but it doesn't indicate who's going to do that study, who's going to do that follow-up, and where does this go. And so that's really my question. From a legislative process, this seems to have been active for quite a number of years without any resolution. And so I'm trying to understand the path to resolution here.
Before others jump in, can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions? So can you tell me again, who are you just referring to that is putting out the report or sort of gathering this information?
It's Beth Pierce. It's the
treasurer.
Yep. The treasurer's office, and it's actually a committee. It's the Law Enforcement Retirement Benefits Study Committee.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Dan. It seems like you.
Yeah, I've actually been working with Sheriff Marcoux on this for a couple of years now, and have legislation in to try to fix this. H303. I'm actually sponsoring that with a couple of people, but Senator Westman, I believe, has put that in as the Senate as well.
Yeah.
Although it would have a different number. Yeah, it's definitely a problem for our sheriff's department with recruitment, retention. I mean, we're paying to train other municipalities' law enforcement.
That's right.
And as soon as they're trained and they realize that they don't have a pension or a 20-year retirement path, they say, wow, I can go work for Stowe or Morrisville or, in Chittenden County or the state police. And they say goodbye.
Right.
And there's nothing Roger can do to keep them here, because we cannot compete with a pension system like they have in all the other municipalities. And it's only one of three. I believe there's three sheriff's departments in Vermont that are not part of it. And it all stems from years ago when they kind of decided that they wouldn't be part of the retirement pension because of the cost associated to the local municipality. And so they said, yeah, we're not going to be part of that. And now that's what happens.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that at this point where our pension system is not in the best of shape, especially for the teachers and the and state employees, it's kind of a heavy lift to start adding more individuals to that. If you look at the staffing levels that would be put into the pension system, it's a bunch of people that are within, I believe it's Windsor, Lamoille, and Orleans, or somewhere. I don't know, Senator, I don't know if you can answer that question, but it's 3 or 4 other ones. Mm-hmm. And just trying to figure out what we do about that.
Yeah.
Well, I've introduced bills 3 times on this in 3 different sessions. There's a recognition that something needs to be done. When you have private conversations with Jeanette White, who's the chair of the Government Operations Committee in the Senate, what she will say is that all law enforcement ought to be under the same retirement plan across the state. Sure. The problem comes in when you get there. Sheriff's departments made an election for what plan they wanted sometime around 2001. And at the Lamoille County Sheriff's Office elected at that point. It's interesting that Jeanette White is the senator from Windham. Windham County is in the same position we're in. There are 5 counties that are in the retirement plan that we would like to switch to. I think there's 3 or 4 of us that are in another, and then the rest are someplace else. And so it's kind of all over the board. And the I think it's fair to say the treasurer's office has been opposed to any movement within the system until there's a final resolution where we get everybody into one place. And what is really hard is every time I go in and make the case that we just lost another deputy, and I think in the last year and a half, Rogers lost 2 deputies, one to Stowe, one to Morrisville. And I think there's a third that went to like in county or something, or the state police. And that, so there's like 3 in maybe the last 2 years that he's lost, and he's put all this money into training and then they go. But every time I've gone in to testify on it, and you go around to see, Roger and I've been to breakfast with Jane Kitchell, we've done the whole route. When the treasurer comes in, who is really the steward of all the pension systems, and she unequivocally says, I don't want anything done until we can come up with some resolution, it kind of kills any effort to help our sheriff's office and the sheriff's office here with any of this. And it makes it really difficult. And I think in the background, all of the trouble with the state employee system and the teachers has crippled anything on any pension issue going through. And there are a lot of pieces to all of that. And I have a lot of, I'm very dissatisfied with what happened in the legislature around teachers' retirement and the state employees this winter. And I think we had some opportunities to move ahead and didn't. And but I think all of the retirement issues are just in a quagmire of getting anything done right now.
So,
and the upshot of what I just said is I'm very frustrated with all of this.
yeah, okay. So when you say, do I need to unmute?
No, we can hear
No,
you.
no, you're.
When you say that the treasurer is looking for a broader resolution, can you elaborate on that? But what is the broader resolution the treasurer is looking for?
Well, I think what Senator White is looking for is that all law enforcement be in one place.
Right.
And I think somewhat the treasurer would, if we could find a pathway to get to that in the context of the whole rest of the retirement world, she would. There's also the issue of these state place deputies that we all have in different counties and what's happening with them. And they all have a retirement pack. Some of them work through our sheriff's office and do the transports for the state. And they're considered state employees.
Right, right.
So right in our own office, you might have 2 deputies working and have 2 different policies, which doesn't, to me, make any sense.
Yeah.
May I interject?
Yeah, thank you, William. I was going to call on you. Go for it.
I guess I'll start out with a question. With these younger officers, why do they think that they need to include them on the pension system? The reason why I say that is when I hear about the pension system, what I hear is a very large sucking sound. My father would use the term pounding sand down a rat hole. It's not a very well-run system. And I know that there are some people that want to combine the police officers with the state pension system. I've seen that happen in New Jersey, and the state troopers are not at all very happy with the results. I think that probably the best thing you want to do with younger hires is to not even offer them to getting into this failing pension system. It'd be a lot cheaper and a lot more efficient to give them a 3% match on compensation and put them into a simple IRA. Let them have control over the money. They do a much better job than what's currently happening with the pension system. So at some point in time, you got to fish or cut bait. You keep pulling these people into the pension system and you keep extending their retirement. It's not working out. All new people should be given the option of having complete control over their retirement plan and their future. And using a simple IRA, 3% compensation is not a big cost. I can imagine that the costs to the taxpayer for each pension participant is a lot higher than 3% of their comp. So give them the opportunity to take the money and invest it with a good local advisor like a Ed Jones or JP Morgan or somebody like that. Trust me, I'm sure they'll do a lot better. So, as far as new hires is concerned, why even offer them a pension that is failing? Give them the opportunity to have control over their own retirement. And I think it would help take the pressure off those who have been participating in the pension system all these years.
Yeah, I mean, as folks know who've been coming to these meetings, there's a lot of varying perspectives on the pension systems and what's viable and not. And I think for better or worse, whatever your feelings about how we got here, I think these are some of the things that the task force this summer is going to be looking at. I am curious. I mean, it's interesting to me. Maybe this is more of a question, like for you, Senator Westman, or for you, Dan. Like, part of my sense of the challenges with the pension system is this notion that we don't have enough working participants, that there's this like imbalance. It seems to me that bringing more people into the system would actually aid the system, because you have more people paying in, which is part of what part of my understanding was that was the imbalance, was that you have too many people who are retired and not enough people buying into the system. So it just seems confusing to me when the argument to not let people into the system is the lack of stability of the pension system, when like it seemed like part of the answer was more people coming in. I guess I'd be curious to try to understand that more.
Well, first off, state employees and teachers, there's, as we all know, there are huge issues. There is the state does run the municipal retirement plan, which is for municipal employees, which actually is where Roger would like the deputies to go. And that system is healthy. That system is totally funded and is working. So 2 of the 3 systems that the treasurer's office oversees are not. And I think what many people would say is you're correct, particularly with teachers. We have a retirement system where the people paying in and the contributions that are made for people paying in, there are more retired teachers than there are people working. And that has put a burden on the system.
Thanks. That's a helpful clarification.
With
Bradley.
the municipal pension for law enforcement, it's also 20 years of service. So, unless other unless other municipalities and law enforcement don't offer that, it's going to be hard to keep people in Lamoille County, because it's, that's what they're going after, is the 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. Can I just, I see that Bradley's hand is up and wanted to see if you had a question. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to this. I was a public defender for a few years in Kentucky in my early 30s. And you're right that, more participants help balance the pension. But in terms of recruitment and retention, pretty quickly, young workers figure out, or at least perceive that it feels like a Ponzi scheme in a pension
Exactly.
when you're like contributing huge chunks of your check to like pay for all these retired workers, and you're not getting annual raises and things because all the money's going there. And so, people bail super quick. I would prefer to have a pension, but as long as like I'm a young worker and I feel like I'm balancing this budget and not making any money myself, it's like.
Thank you. So quickly, Bill, your hand is still up. Is that from before? Yeah, that's totally fine. I just wanted to make sure. Eric, hello, welcome.
Hey, thanks for doing this again, guys. So just, on the pensions and the defined contribution, defined benefit thing, Kate, you're correct that, if we go to a choice of defined benefit, rather defined contribution for new employees, then that will do the opposite of what the bill you guys just passed and the task you created is tasked to do, which is to reduce the ADEC. Offering a defined contribution plan will in fact increase the ADEC. So that's not really going to be on the table unless there's a massive revenue source that goes to offset that loss to the fund through the defined contribution option. And while it's true that that if 3% matching, independently people manage their funds and they worked 40 years and they died at 80, they would probably do better. But the purpose of a pension is to insulate people against catastrophe and disaster, right? So if somebody has a debilitating injury, when they're 50, then they would have money to take care of them through their retirement and disabled years, even though they didn't work the full time. If they manage to live to 95, and the money runs it out at 85, then, the state's going to have to cover those people anyways. So there are lots of ways that the pension spreads the risk and spreads the benefit, which is, FDR social safety net that is, currently under attack, that secures our society, that spreads risk and spreads benefit. And so I understand the idea of the defined contribution option, but it's not what the legislator passed. It's not the spirit of this state to help just, distribute risk and take care of people who suffer catastrophe and live a long time. So I want to thank you, Kate, for your vote for the Senate version of the task force and for going out and doing that. And I want to thank all the legislatures for, because I paid a lot more attention this year. I usually pay attention. I usually have a few things to say, but I was really involved with following all of your votes and actions this year. And I became even more aware of what hard work this is and how deep you guys dig into these issues and all the things you have to balance. And even though I don't agree with a number of things, I agree with more than I disagree with. And I appreciate that we have such sincere and earnest caretakers of the public good on this screen, everyone in this Zoom. So thanks for your service, sure.
Thanks, Eric. A really kind words. I really appreciate it. Karen, I see that your hand is up, and I know you had a question in the chat too, so I want to make sure if that still needs answering, please mention that as well.
Michael answered it for me, but my quick question about pension is, I kept hearing pension is a promise, and I'm just ignorant about it, honestly. And from what my husband says, who works in the private sector, says it's absolutely not a promise. And I just wondered about that. It's like a benefit that could change at any time, is what I thought. So
It's a non-performing benefit for a lot of people.
But what do you mean by that, Bill?
Well, it's not turning out to be what the promises were several years ago. And that Zoom meeting we had with all the teachers, 5 or 6 weeks ago was a sad event for a lot of those folks, because they did not get what they were promised 10, 15, 20 years ago. And again, I've been in this business of managing retirement money for 42 years. And, when the pool gets so big, it gets too big, and there's just doesn't seem to be a lot of accountability on the management. So not that I want to, I'm just suggesting that going forward, giving the individual new hire the opportunity to be in complete control of their retirement, their future, I think would be a good selling option, rather than getting them dumped into a system that seems to be failing miserably.
Dan or Senator Westman, I don't know if either of you guys want to respond to that question of pension as a promise. Not to put you on the spot.
Well, there's more. This is more than pension. This is pension and benefits.
Right.
And if I was going to talk about my disappointment in the budget, the Senate put dealing with what we call OPEB, which is the other employment retirement benefits, which is really the present teachers that are out there making an advance contribution to pay for their health care when they retire. It's a very small item in the scope of the whole budget. It's about a $14 million cost this year. We have always been pay as you go for retired teachers' health care. And the Senate passed unanimously a plan to pre-fund the health care benefit for retired teachers. And that question of OPEB was, and that healthcare benefit in funding that, the rating agencies, Finch in particular, said, we have to get to a place where we pre-fund that as long as we're going to maintain a system of benefits into the future. And for $14 million, you'd start making a contribution for somebody that was a young teacher in their 20s or 30s to do that. We could have reduced the $550 odd million, or the $5.5 billion obligation we've got by $822 million, just by moving that 14 million and starting to pre-fund it this year. The Senate had moved it into, we weren't able to do that. And that would have reduced that $5 billion liability by $822 million alone. We seem to be in the legislature in a state paralyzed to do anything about the retirement plan. And part of my concern is that the study committees that we created are all going to come back with recommendations in an election year. And we couldn't do anything in a year that's non-election. And what I would say to William is, I have a defined contribution plan, not a defined benefit.
Right.
I have and with my employer, and I think it works well. But we're handed a system where we can't just throw it up in the air. We have to work with the system we've got, and we have to work with it. If I could see a way where I could do new hires and give them an election, I might. But that doesn't solve the existing system. It's what I would say is, we didn't promise exactly what a retirement system was going to look like or the healthcare benefit was going to look like. But I think we gave, through contractual agreements, we gave people the belief that there will be a healthy system for them. Not guaranteeing exactly what it will look like, but we did, through contracts, say to people there will be a system. So this is not as easy as scrap one system and go to another. I don't know how to do that. And so this is a really hard thing that we're going through. But at some point, we need to, in the legislature, start making steps. And that healthcare piece that I just meant was a step I think we should have taken this year, that we could accommodate in a budget and move ahead and start to pick this thing apart. And we've got to do that and not be afraid to just not to move.
Thanks.
I hope that was kind of clear.
I also just feel like, I guess this is like maybe the social worker in me, but I always, when I'm thinking about these issues, there's a lot about the intricacies that I don't understand, that none of us really fully understand. But thinking about them from a process perspective and also just a systems perspective, in terms of like, how do our current actions impact our relationships with one another? How do they impact our functioning generally as a system? And I think, you know, whatever we ultimately end up with pensions, the reality is that the state, you know, entered into agreements with people. Mm-hmm. And when we enter into agreements with people and then we break those agreements, or we create systems that are unsustainable, it's a breach of public trust. And that's a big deal. You know, that has long-term ramifications for things beyond pensions. And, you know, that when we come to the table and say, okay, now here's a new great initiative that we want all of you guys to get behind and like pay with your tax dollars. And you're like, I don't know about that, right? Like, so, I mean, I just think we have an obligation as a state, as state government, to do everything in our power to honor the agreements that we've made, because it has significant impact on lots of things beyond pensions, in my perspective. I want to pause for a second on pensions. It's 9:46. And for lots of very good reason, we've given a lot of time in these meetings to pensions, which is like, that is super valid. I just want to make sure before we are done for the day, if there's anyone else that came with any questions or anything along those lines, I just want to make some space for that. And for folks who've joined, you can pop up your blue hand, or you can put it in the chat, or you can just jump in. Oh yeah, Bradley, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
I'll give you I have some kudos. I got high-speed internet in Eden 2 weeks ago, so I think broadband must be expanding, because I had satellite with a full 5-second delay for months up here, and now I have instant streaming internet, and it's awesome.
That is awesome. Very happy to hear that.
I definitely think with the CUD system that we set up, we're going to start seeing a lot more people with the same experience you have, where they've had really poor internet, you know, and all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, I can get fiber, you know. So looking forward to those investments being deployed. So although it's going to take years to get way out for sure, but good stuff. Yes.
And we have Michael Rooney on here, who, again, not to put people on the spot, but is leads up our local CUD and has been doing awesome work in the community. So shout out to Michael. I'm really excited to get to a place where I can give you guys my money and get internet from you. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, or want to add? Eric, I see your hand up.
Thanks. And after saying all those nice things about you, I'm going to give you all a hard time. Sorry. So early in the session, I took you guys to task for not voting for the Brian Chena amendment to tax the wealthy to help fund the pensions, and you guys were saying that you wouldn't want to change a bill out of committee that substantially. So explain to me what happened with the feminine hygiene products bill that we you guys voted to attach a fairly substantial tax break for out-of-state corporations to.
So I'm just gonna, Dan jump in if anytime. My understanding is that the bill that you're referring to, so the Brian Chena amendment was an amendment on the floor that was like looking to do some pretty substantial things with revenue sources and where to direct them. The bill that you're referring to, the feminine hygiene bill, came out of the Senate, and then it went into Ways and Means. And Ways and Means did, in the House, put a whole bunch of stuff up on there that was not there when it was sent over by the Senate. And so what we voted on the floor was what had come out of the committee. So not to get like too wonky about it, but the two are just very different procedurally in terms of what had taken place. And it had come out of Ways and Means Committee, I think, with a pretty solid committee vote. I mean, it's uncommon for these things to come out with that. Dan, do you remember?
Yeah, I think that was a bill we passed earlier and sent over to the Senate, and they didn't act on it. So we took a Senate bill and got back on it. No, is that what we did? No, didn't we send that one over earlier?
No, the feminine hygiene bill, the Senate.
It came from the Senate.
This is the third time the Senate has taken
Right,
the
but
sales.
we put,
And what it does for everybody else on there, it took the sales tax off
Right.
from feminine hygiene products. This is the third time the Senate has passed it.
but once it got to the House, it went to Ways and Means because it affects the revenues of the state. And Ways and Means took an earlier version of a bill that we had passed and sent to the Senate that the Senate did not act on. And we hooked it onto a Senate bill, the feminine hygiene product bill, and sent it back to them.
Now, the intricacies of that afterwards, but the original bill, I was on health and welfare when we originally passed the first bill that would take the sales tax off feminine hygiene products.
At the end of the session, that often happens where, a bill will come, the House will send a bill over, and then it will have amendments on the Senate, and then it will come back, and it will look different. So, I think that's common at the end of the session where bills go back and forth quite a bit, as Eric was talking about earlier, where we sent a bill over to the Senate, they changed it, came back, and we sent it to a committee of conference, or the committee of jurisdiction did. So.
Yeah, so those ones, I mean, yeah, again, not to get too wonky, but like the process was different in those two scenarios. But I will just say about that Ways and Means bill, as a new legislator, it was the first time I had heard the phrase Christmas tree bill, which is like, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but like basically they just like hang so many things on it, right? That at the end, and it's like, you can look at it two different ways. One of them is like, oh, look, there's something on here for everyone to like. But as another colleague said, there's something on here for everyone to hate. And I think that was part of what became difficult about that bill. There was just so much hung on it. And so if I'm correct, that bill, like Dan said, then went back to Senate and it just sat, and they took the feminine hygiene aspect of it and they put it in like a miscellaneous, maybe in the appropriations bill or
No, because it's germane. It's increasing revenues. There was a tax it was changing a tax. So therefore it gave Ways and Means the ability, it had to go to Ways and Means and they can do whatever they want. A couple of years ago, we had a Senate bill that came over in Human Services that was to put a tax on sugary drinks. And it was a Senate bill that was on our wall, and we passed it out of committee with no vote. It was sent to appropriations, and they did a strike all and put the budget on it and changed the name of the bill. So, it's all this parliamentary stuff at the end of the session that happens.
it gets a little wild.
That was clarifying.
Sure.
It's like, obviously this is confusing and I'm trying to learn more information. So while I was kind of hanging you out to dry a little bit,
Sorry.
I was curious about how it went down. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a wild process how it all comes to be, especially at the end, as Dan was saying, things just start flying around and And being on Zoom, I think it was tricky. You know, I think when you're in the building, things start flying around and people, you're all in the same place. And so there's maybe you're talking about it in the cafeteria, you're getting more information, but on Zoom towards the end of the session, it definitely started getting wild because, you know, there's groups of people making these decisions and it's all just happening very rapidly. So.
And there was, I mean, my first term, there was a bill they took and there was a strike all amendment to it and changed the whole subject of the bill, but the lead sponsor's name was still on it. And he was getting like hundreds of emails and had no interest, was not his bill. So then they had to figure out how to get his name off it. But I don't remember the actual bill, what the subject matter was. But yeah, I remember talking to that individual legislator and they were like, I can't believe that happened.
So like, just because I would not have known this 5 months ago, a strike all amendment means they take the entire content of the bill and they strike it all. Mm-hmm. So it has the same bill number, it has the same title, but they have taken all content of the bill out. And what's most common is they'll do a strike all amendment and then just put new language in that only like mildly or moderately amends the original bill. It's just that doing a strike all is easier because it's easier to read it in the end. But what it can mean is that you have a strike all like Dan was describing, where you just literally strike the entire bill and put an entirely different content in there and then use it as a vehicle to like move something along. So, and yeah, again, procedure.
I just, so in this case, a miscellaneous tax bill, each year the tax department brings to the legislature a bill with a lot of times technical changes. So this year, the miscellaneous tax bill had small incremental changes around. Also, within the miscellaneous tax bill, every year you have to set the statewide property tax rate for given what all the communities passed as a budget. What do we need to have for a education tax rate on a property tax rate, which is in there. There were additions to that. One of the additions was the language for feminine hygiene products and removing the sales tax from that. And I would say most of us view we don't tax food under the sales tax because it's a mandatory thing. And for most of us, a feminine hygiene product is not something that half of the population can live without. It's more like a basic item like food. So we have tried to stay away from with the sales tax, taxing things like that. So that got added. The House did add a few things that in that bill that I would have put in the category, like you explained, that is like a Christmas tree. Some of those got stripped out. The chair of the Ways and Means Committee in the House has long wanted a tax on a cloud tax on everything that goes to the cloud. The business community has opposed that. They knew the Scott administration was opposed to that. That in the end got stripped out of there. So there were pieces of the miscellaneous bill that certainly did get added that but the majority of that bill were technical changes for the tax department to allow them to do their job, and also pieces like the feminine hygiene piece that is things that had already passed the Senate and there was a lot of support for in the House around those. So the majority of that bill was not a Christmas tree. It was work to get the work done of the state. There were some pieces to those, and those pieces, for the most part, in the end, were controversial enough to get dropped.
Yeah, thank you for that.
We every once in a while do have a Christmas tree when, in my view, people don't act try to work out around the system. But it is rarer that happens. Those are the exceptions, not the norm.
I
So
agree with that.
I-
Mostly the bills are straightforward and they're not all over the place. They're usually one subject, and how we are going to help Vermonters through whatever that legislation is. It doesn't usually end up like that. So I agree.
Yeah. Thank you guys for explaining that more deeply. So I just want to acknowledge it's 9:59.
I got a
Lovely meeting.
5-second comment here, Kate.
Yeah, go for it.
I'd
Maybe
encourage
go buy some flags.
I would encourage all my legislators not to not pass good bills because you think the governor might veto them. I think that's a really bad habit that the Dems and what was a near supermajority would not pass bills because you thought the governor would veto it. If we're going to be held responsible for not doing something about a problem, let the governor be unhooked up for that, and not the legislatures. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
I hope everyone enjoys a beautiful weekend. It's
Mm.
been lovely seeing you all on these Saturday mornings. And like I said, I'll follow up with an email. And Kurt, if you want to continue the conversation about the work you are doing, if there's any way we can be helpful, let's stay in touch by email or some other form. We'd be happy to help you with that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
I'd
I don't
love
know
to get something done on your retirement issue, Kurt.
Thank you.
I'd love to.
I hear you.
Thank you.